Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. It's Wednesday, 20th January 2021, and it's Inauguration Day in America. Joe Biden, 78-year-old Joe Biden, will be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States of America, alongside Kamala Harris, the first female and woman of color to be elected Vice President. And we'll see that officially bringing to an end the Donald Trump era. That's expected to take place in a couple of hours from now. The day usually would involve a massive ceremonial event attended by hundreds of thousands of people. Remember 2009, 1.8 million people gathered for Barack Obama. It's perhaps the highest number in American history. But this, they say, is an inauguration like no other. Things are different this year. Aftermath the pandemic. Remember, United States is now the epicenter for coronavirus, and indeed the violent riot that followed Trump supporters invading the Capitol some weeks ago. So things are expected to be very different. Biden already asked his supporters to stay away. The Washington, D.C. mayor has also warned people not to come around. And in keeping with these crowd size restrictions, we expect to see activities like the parade and inaugural balls to be virtual this year. Already, we know that the live audience would be restricted to members of Congress, just one guest each, rather than the hundreds of thousands that usually characterize events like this. And it's tight security in Washington, D.C. aftermath the Capitol invasion. I'm joined this morning for all of these activities. We're also talking about what the Biden presidency would mean for Nigeria and indeed the African continent. Publisher Inside Watch Africa, public affairs analyst Shea Adeyemo. Good morning and thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too.
All right, so another very noticeable difference in this year's inauguration is the expected absence of the outgoing president. The first time a sitting president in America will not be witnessing the inauguration of a successor, they say, in 150 years. So Vice President Mike Pence plans to attend, but Trump is still holding on to the sentiment, or perhaps refusing to concede electoral defeat. Let's begin with the significance of Trump's absence on a day like this.
Historically, it's not very good for America. Like you rightly said, it's not happened in a very, very long time. The tradition for Americans is that the sitting president will naturally be there to, witness what's going to happen that day. But obviously, with the kind of relationship and the fact that he has continuously said to people that the election was told of him, that he won the election and all that, I never expected him to be part of what's going to happen today, because obviously there's tension, particularly with the unfortunate incident that happened with the supporters going to the Capitol. Obviously that's not something that is good for the history and standing of America, because obviously they, for all of us, are the people we look up to when it comes to democracy. So with all of that incident, I'm not surprised that he's not attending. I even hear that the president's no longer elect. The president's going to be sworn in a few hours.
Well, he's still elect. Trump is still president.
Okay. In a few hours now, I'd say that he's even not expecting him, that he will not miss his not being there. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll talk much about that in a short while. Precisely, the incoming president did mention that it is not important for him to come. That perhaps it's the only thing both of them have agreed on in a long time. Simon Ateba, publisher Today News Africa, joins us live from Washington, D.C., right at the center where we expect the incoming president to be sworn in a matter of hours. Let's begin with the sentiment, the general sentiment over there as regards the outgoing president. And what exactly would you say the mood is like for what might eventually be mostly a virtual event in America?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the general sentiment here is you have two of them. You have relief, and then you have pride. Relief in the sense that relief, the nightmare is finally over. Trump is going, the lives are going, and professionalism is coming back with Joe Biden. And then you also have pride, because even though those things happened, even though Trump continued to claim that the election was stolen without any evidence, he lost more than 60 cases in court. The democratic institutions were stronger, and in the end, democracy was able to prevail. So we have those two sentiments of people really being relieved that Trump is going. He was too much, he was everywhere, he was too invasive. And then you also have the pride that even in the midst of all those things, the democracy was able to prevail.
Absolutely. Americans remain sharply divided behind these two ideologies, given the record numbers of people who came out irrespective of the pandemic to vote in November. But we are told security is intense where you are, Washington, D.C. Ahead the inauguration ceremony, thousands of National Guard reserve soldiers have been deployed in the wake of the Capitol building invasion. What can you see and what is the mood?
Yeah, so before now, inauguration is a time of celebration where you have hundreds of thousands of people coming from different states and coming here to really see the peaceful transfer of power. But because of who Trump is and because of what happened here on January 6th when some domestic terrorists stormed the Capitol and, and unleash mayhem. You have right now almost 27,000 security personnel, 25,000 of them are members of the National Guard. The roads are blocked, you have roadblocks everywhere, you have a curfew, you have different places that have been closed. So security is tight. And if I can go back to what I said earlier, Trump is leaving the presidency with the worst approval rating, almost 34%, the worst in several decades. He's also leaving the presidency with 400,000 Americans who have died from COVID-19, the worst death toll in the entire world. And he also living a damaged economy. And so and now he's living a city that looks like green zone in Baghdad. You have people have never seen this here. They've never seen so many National Guard having AK-47 rifle and ready to shoot. So it's a good time that there's a transfer of power, but also a sad reminder that Trump was really one of the worst presidents in this country.
All right, Mr. Ateba, hold it. I'll be back with you. Let me get back to the studio. He talked about worst approval rating. We hear the outgoing president will not be granted the military send-off as desired. Recall the insurrection, incitement of insurrection, earned him another impeachment by the House. Yeah. And we expect to see a trial at the Senate immediately after this inauguration. Would you say the almighty Trump is leaving office perhaps as a disgraced or the disgraced 45th president of the United States of America, as many would say?
With all the steps that's been taken so far, obviously is leaving as a disgrace precedent, because obviously the steps that have been taken are not appropriate for a president, at least of the United States. He's probably the only one that has been sort of impeached from the office or in the office twice as president of the United States. That, for me, is not something anybody would want to look forward to. But as a person, with the way he has conducted himself so far, I begin to ask myself, is he really feeling down? Is he feeling defeated? Because obviously it seemed to me, with the way he's conducted himself, that is someone who feels comfortable with all the trouble. I think he feels good about it and is just ready for it. Maybe because some of his nails have been cut.
We hardly can tell. He's no longer on Twitter.
And all of those things, yes. Yeah. Maybe for those reasons, he probably is feeling some level of remorse. But beyond that, yes, as a human being, I think it's not a very, very appropriate thing to have, come on you at a time like this, particularly as president of the United States.
So earlier we talked about the fact that Trump will not be at the inauguration ceremony, but the Constitution of America doesn't require an outgoing president to attend. But they say the image of the past and, incoming president has a way of showing a sense of continuity in government and a peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
But my question is, don't you think this is a historic burden both of them will share? Because prior to Trump's inauguration himself, we saw how sharply divided they were in ideology with Barack Obama, but Obama was still there.
Yeah.
One would have thought that Biden would have shown a little bit of remorse, at least show some sense of unity, which I believe he will preach during his speech, in not just calling his bluff when he said he wasn't going to come.
So yes, he's got experience. He was in the Senate for 36 years. He was vice president, but he's a human being. And I think he's taking so much, considering all of the things that Trump had thrown at him over and over and over again. And so no matter how a diplomat or a gentleman or a matured man you are, eventually you're a human being and you would react. So I want to believe that he probably, caved into all of that. At the end of the day, that was why he said what he said as regards the fact that he was expecting him at the inauguration anyway, because at the end of the day, Trump had thrown too many things that any human being can actually condole at the President-elect Biden.
Well, America saw it coming. Let's turn back to Washington, where Mr. Teba is standing by. I want us to talk about the involvement of Nigerians in the Biden administration, his cabinet precisely. But just to also mention that about 3 Nigerian Americans have won elective offices in the 2020 election cycle. Many Nigerians are quite excited about this. There's also a lot of anticipation as regards whether or not Biden will be decisive to remove the travel ban and ease immigration in that regard. What are your thoughts, Mr. Ateba?
Okay, so if you ask me, the first thing that you should really be proud of Joe Biden is the diversity in his cabinet. Right now, there are at least 3 Nigerian Americans who are part of his cabinet. One of them, Adewale Adeyemo, is going to be the Deputy Treasury Secretary in the Department of the Treasury. That's the first time ever. And you have Nigerian lawyers, and then you have other Nigerians who are part of the cabinet. That's a big thing, not just because in the Trump administration, most people who were at the White House, 99.9% of the people were white people. There was only one black woman who was sacked, and when she was removed, there was no single black person at the White House. Now you have almost 50% of the people who have been appointed by Joe Biden so far, they are people of color. And then you have 3 Nigerian Americans, and then you have a Nigerian who is going to have a top, very senior position, a cabinet position in his administration, which is great. And you also have Joe Biden around 5 p.m. today. He's going to sign a couple of executive orders. He will rejoin the Paris Accord. He will rejoin the WHO. He will repeal the travel ban and the Muslim ban. He will suspend so many other things that Trump did that were not really in the interest, not just of the US, but also were not in the interest of Africa and the rest of the world. So, and if you listen to the testimony yesterday of Anthony Blinken, who is going to become the Secretary of State, and his job will be to drive the US policy around the world. They are going to repeal almost every single thing that Trump did in terms of the American first. Because what makes America great, really, is not because they have nuclear power, it's not because the economy is robust. What makes this country great is the ability to have alliances with countries in Africa, in Europe, in different places. And so what Biden wants to do is try to reassure allies, including most countries in sub-Saharan Africa, that we can work together and that the US will remain a dependable ally to African countries and the rest of the world. I think that will be a big departure from America First policy That was the Trump policy. America first policy almost became America alone. And Biden is going to try to rebuild all the damaged relationship that Trump was able to, that Trump damaged.
Well,
all the relationships.
we'll see how all of that play out. But I think it's still going to be America first. You look at the things that Biden has talked about doing in his first 100 days in office. It's about fighting the pandemic, which first is in America. The economy needs a lot of rejuvenating. He's talking about creating jobs and the stimulus package. He's talking about racial inequality. You don't think that America will also look first to itself, even under Biden?
Okay, so if I can say, yes, every country in the world, even Nigeria, what you do first is you take care of your people first. There are 3,000 to 4,000 people dying here every day from COVID-19. Right now, yesterday, a day before Joe Biden takes office today, 400,000 Americans have died. More than 23 million people have contracted COVID here. So you have to deal with it because it's affecting the economy. With COVID still raging, people are not able to go out to really socialize and open businesses. And so you need to deal with it. But also, you need to be able to help. You can't stop funding from WHO because the funding goes to the poorest countries around the world. And that's what WHO does. They do vaccine, they do things that the US and many countries cannot do. And you can't decide that you pull away from the UN and pull away from the climate change accord. And yes, it will be America first, but it wouldn't be America alone. It means that you will still have to build alliances. You will listen to people. The biggest change that will happen here first will be the biggest change in tone, the way you treat people with dignity. And if I go back to what you said about racial inequalities, often when Nigerians look at what happened here, maybe the Black American here, we don't remember that those people, they're actually the people who came from Badagry in Lagos. They are still the same people, the Black people, the Nigerian people who were here, the people from Cameroon and Sierra Leone, and all those people.
Likely also still sending money back to Africa. I think I get your point, Mr. Tiba, but let me hold you for a minute to return to the studio very quickly. He's talked about the fact that Biden has brought in people of color to his cabinet, and that also reminds us the speed with which he was able to form members of his cabinet. The fact that a day before his inauguration, 5 of them are already being questioned by the Senate, vis-a-vis our experience back at home. You think we have lessons to learn from there?
A lot of lessons. I mean, so I was afraid when a lot of people started to talk about the fact that America is no longer the people to look up to because of what happened there. For me, that's not the way to go because obviously, I mean, this has even shown us, like you said, a lot of pride has come into place because then the system has thrown Trump out of the space because the system is that robust. So for me, there's so much to learn from America in the way they do their things. I mean, Trump is an individual. He's been flogged in line because the system has questioned and shown us that the system is more powerful than any individual. So definitely the way they've done their things, the way everything is as difficult as Trump had made transition. Look at how much of transition that have happened. Imagine if it were the reverse. In other words, if Trump had made it easier, if he had made it this difficult and they were still able to achieve all the things they were able to achieve, then there's a lot of lesson to be learned from them.
What is the actual impact to Nigeria and the continent of Africa? Because people seem to enjoy the stories. Recall in 2009, because there was a man who had a Kenyan root and then it felt as if an African really was leading America. But there's a lot of talk about Kamala Harris, the first female and, probably the first woman with African descent to have occupied that position. The former president Obasanjo had written in a 6-paragraph letter saying that he was reasonably sure that Harris would have some Nigerian DNA in her, as most of those taken to the Caribbean from Africa went from Nigeria of today. What does that mean for the Nigerian people? The fact that, oh yes, there's a woman who perhaps of Asian and African descent. Does it have any consequence really?
Not the kind of consequence that people, I think, look forward to. But what I know is it is a thing of pride for somebody, whoever, that is related to you in any way to be doing well. It is a natural that people will identify with such a person because whether you're white or black, American or Nigerian, as long as you're doing well, your people naturally will queue behind you. But I believe that as Nigerians or Africans, I think we need to tread this with a lot of caution. The idea of thinking that so everything will be handed over to us because we now have a woman who is of African descent as Vice President of America is not something that we should stay with or think will happen. If the president, who was Obama, was of African descent, a Kenyan, and nothing happened, nothing happened. So we don't expect that because the vice president, because then, like he said, there will always be America first. Okay, it was you that said that. There will always be America first. What he's preaching is that there would not be American alone. But the Yoruba people even say that when you get burnt, and your child gets born, you will first take care of yourself before you take care of your child. And so I think Africans, and Nigeria particularly, should learn from that they will need to take care of themselves first before they take care of us. So it behoves on us as a people to take care of ourselves. So the idea, after doing all of these years, democracy for 50, 60 years, we still expect people to keep handing things over to us, I think is not the way to think as a people. We have all that it takes to stand on our own and deal with these people as allies and partners, not as children who desires handovers.
Let's get back to Mr. Atiba in DC. So perhaps one of the reasons why most Nigerians did not like Trump was because of his immigration policy. Do you expect anything particularly should change for Nigerians hoping to change residency under Biden?
Yeah, is your question what will change with the Joe Biden administration? I'm trying to make sure I heard you right.
Yes, I'm asking Mr. Atiba, if you can hear me, if you think that U.S. immigration policy would change significantly, especially as it regards to Nigerians hoping to change residency.
Yes, so I think that if I heard you well, I think that having Biden as president and having Kamala Harris as the first Black and South Asian American vice president, it will send a total different message to the world. One thing that you need to realize is it is not like everything is interconnected. When you have slavery in the US, you end up with apartheid in South Africa. When you have Black people being disrespected or being enslaved in the US, you have Black people around the world being disrespected in the Caribbean, in South Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in different parts of the world. And I think that the US set the pace. When people see a woman, this is the first female vice president in the US. It took so many years to have a woman there. It sent the message that women can do it. Everyone can do it. Male, female can do it. When you see her as a Black person, a senator, a lawyer, someone who is extremely intelligent, it sends the message that Black people are not dumb and stupid the way they are trying to portray Black people in this country and in different places around the world. And in terms of policy, Biden has said it, we won't have America alone anymore. He will rebuild relationship with the continent of Africa. He will fund the UN for peace mission in different parts of Africa. He will treat Africans with dignity. And he won't try to ban students. Trump tried to send students back home who had already paid their school fees. Because of COVID-19, he said that there is no way they can take lectures online. and he wanted them to go back home. And we had judges that opposed it, and he lost in court. Biden will not do that. Biden will also send the right message, the message of hope and peace and dignity and unity. And the biggest message is that together we can do it.
Biden is coming in, Mr. Atiba, Biden is coming in with close to 40 years of experience as congressman, 8 years as vice president. How much remarkable impact is that track record? How much value is he expected to bring to the U.S. the U.S. presidency vis-a-vis what we've seen play out in the past 4 years?
Yes, so Biden is the most prepared president in this country ever. He's 78 years old. He's been a senator for more than 3 decades. He's been vice president for 8 years. He knows the U.S. He was born, he lived in a place where he used to be the only black person in Delaware, the only white person among black people. He used to work in a swimming pool. He is also coming with a kind heart. He lost his first wife and child as a result of an accident. He's fought for a long time for racial equality in South Africa. And so I think that is bringing all those things, because it's not just being intelligent. It's about having that care, that empathy, that desire, that recognition that together we make a bigger impact. So, and it shows already in the way he selected his cabinet. To have a Nigerian who is going to be the Deputy Treasury Secretary, Adewale Adeyemo, it's almost unprecedented. It's something that no one could have imagined it. It can't happen under the administration of Trump. And so I think it's that change, those little changes, having a diverse cabinet, being sensitive, being caring for the people.
Okay.
And I think that's what we make his administration a successful one.
So the thing Mr. Atiba mentioned that Biden is 78. So by the time he takes the oath of office in a matter of hours, he's going to be the oldest person ever sworn in as president. I think that Trump held that record, having been sworn in at 17. Ronald Reagan was 69 when he was sworn in. Theodore Roosevelt was perhaps the youngest at 42. Is it a situation of age is nothing but a number? A 78-year-old American president. Do you have any fears?
Not at all. Incidentally, I'm one of those who always believe that young people should take over. And I've written about something like that at some point. I can't remember vividly now. But I said to myself, it seemed to me that obviously you need experience. Obviously you need a track record. Obviously you need a lot of things to be able to operate at the highest office. Yes, I'm not saying that a young man will not deliver, but I'm saying that it is obvious, it's dawned on me over time, like I used to believe that, oh, it has to be a young man with energy and all that. But energy is not enough. You need diplomacy, you need relationship, you need somebody sitting on the other side of the table who knows you, who trusts you, who have done things with you, who can say, okay, of a truth, this man can deliver. And so you have friends across the world, you have friends. So for whatever it's worth, I'm a believer of now, my belief has changed, that you need both people on board, the young and the old. And so for me, a 78-year-old person is not too old to deliver. In fact, is probably even more qualified, because obviously this man has shown with all the things he has done. One of the things that he has done that has impressed me the most is how he served as vice president under Obama. Obama obviously showed us that the Americans are still not settled with the idea of having a black man sitting in the White House. But this was a white man, a very, very white man, because of his track record and all of that. He has relationship and all that. He was able to submit himself to the extent that Obama came out and honored him with one of the highest honor in America, recognizing how he cooperated with him. So this man is not just any man. He's a man with character. He's a man that is robust. He's a man that understands the game and is able to play it very well. So for me, it's going to show me or show a lot of people that age is obviously something that one should not say, oh, because you are this old, that's why you cannot deliver. Maybe it's even an advantage.
We'll look forward to that. In Nigeria, perhaps what many people are saying is, well, America has had a 42-year-old president. Maybe we should also try it out here in Nigeria to have a balanced view of things.
Absolutely. I don't have anything against. I'm just saying that I used to think that the moment you're that old, you don't have anything to contribute again. But over time, I begin to see that the older you become, the more strength, because then this involves a lot of things. So it's not about you having the courage. It's about the other person that you want to talk to having certain respect for you. If you remember, let me quickly just drop this in. When President Obasanjo was president of Nigeria, one of the things that worked for him was because at the time, a lot of people he was discussing with were people who knew him as head of state. And so there was that respect. It was probably the only Nigerian president that will go to the US and got the kind of recognition that he got because of his experience, his pedigree, and all of that. So it's important that age sometimes counts, for good when you have it and you're able to use it well.
Absolutely. Have been speaking with the publisher Inside Watch Africa and foreign affairs analyst. Sheyi Adeyemo, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you so
Samuel
much.
Ateba is also still standing by for us at Washington, D.C. We'll take a break and return with more on America's Inauguration Day. Stay with us. Well, we're counting down to 78-year-old Joe Biden being sworn in as the 46th president of the United States of America. And there's a lot of anticipation ahead of the inaugural address, which is considered quite a significant one. It sets the tone for the presidential term and also, one way or the other, has a way to lead some of the most memorable and quotable speeches that we've seen in American politics. Remember John F. Kennedy's quote that it is not, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country was also an excerpt from his inaugural speech. This morning, I have Sheyi Adeyemo, publisher Inside Watch Africa, Simon Ateba, publisher Today News Africa, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, thank you for staying the course on the program. Let me begin with you, Mr. Ateba. Biden has an uphill task ahead of himself to lead a really polarized nation plagued by economic, health, and quite a number of crises at this time. What do you expect him to say in a couple of hours when he's sworn in? What do you anticipate will characterize his inaugural speech?
So, thank you for having me. I wanted to say something about the age.
Go ahead, please.
First, but let me answer your question. So Biden has said that there are 4 crises that he will have to deal with. The first one is the health crisis, COVID-19, 400,000 people dead in the US, the worst death toll in the world, more than 23 million people infected. And the projection is that by mid-February, more than 100,000 more people will die from COVID. So that's a big crisis. And as COVID continues to kill people and spread, it affects the economy. Businesses cannot open. Shops, restaurants, everywhere is shut down in different states. So that's the first crisis that we have to deal with because it impacts and affects all other crises. The second crisis will be the economy. And as you know, he has already asked Congress to give him $1.9 trillion to be able to revamp the economy and give relief to the American people. And the third crisis will be racial justice. He's trying to bring people back together, and it will include police reform, the way they treat Black people in this country, and the way Black people are being shot easily by the police. And the third crisis that he will deal with has to do with climate change, which is almost an existential crisis. And one of the things that you really need to understand is that most presidents in the US have one crisis at a time. Biden seems to have all the crises at a time. Some presidents had only a pandemic. Others had an economic crisis when Obama came to power in 2009. The main problem was the economic crisis. But Biden has all these crises at the same time. But Biden also seems to be the man for the moment. He's old. He's 78 years old. He has experience. He's been the vice president with a Black person, so he understands Black people. And he grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. And where he grew up, he used to be the only white person among Black people. So he's been fighting for racial justice for a long time about the apartheid in South Africa. And he's dealt with an economic crisis before in 2009 when he came to power with Obama as vice president. So I believe that he's up to the task, that he's able to do it. And because of his experiences and all his track record. But I wanted to say something quick about the age. So the problem with age in Africa is that, you have all those old leaders who don't actually do anything for the people. Just to give you an example, when I listen to Biden asking for $1.9 trillion from Congress, I know it will have a direct impact on me. I will receive money directly from that money. But when people in Nigeria listen to debate at the National Assembly, it doesn't seem to have any impact on people for years. It's not as if electricity has improved. It's not as if the economy has improved. And also, the difference here and the difference there is that in most countries in Africa, you have people like in Cameroon, where one person who is already extremely old has been in power for almost 4 decades and has changed the same thing in Uganda recently, where you have the same man who has, who has been in power for 35 years. And the best quote I can have is from a Nigerian prophet, Prophet TB Joshua. And Prophet TB Joshua said, you need to have old people, but beside the old people, you need to have young people. You need to groom them. And he was having a prophecy for the 2020. I know usually prophets are not really respected at home, but those are the things that should happen. When you have an old person, it should be someone who respects democracy.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't have a president who the court say, hey, you have this guy in prison, free him. Like in Nigeria, you have the Shiite leader who is in prison. The court says free him, and you don't free him because you are the president. That's not a republic. The first thing that I learned in the US is the concept of republic. What does it mean to be a republic? You need to be able to keep the republic. It means that you have all these laws that everyone must abide by.
Absolutely, Mr. Ateba. I'll get back to you shortly because I see that if I let you talk, you can just keep going on and on and on. Okay, so yesterday, just the eve of inauguration, we saw the president-elect give a very emotional speech at Delaware saying how much he loved the city and the fact that he would even remember them in his death. And just before that, there was a candlelight memorial in honor of people who died of COVID-19 complications in America. We're told that figure has risen over 400,000, and indeed the incoming president seems to be quite passionate about them. We saw him televise Biden taking the coronavirus vaccine jab. He's promised to do 100 million doses within his first 100 days in office. The big question, however, would be how much difference can Biden make given the rot, which largely has been attributed to the position of the outgoing president as regards this virus.
Gather tonight a nation in mourning to pay tribute to the lives we have lost. A grandmother or grandfather who was our whole world. A parent, partner, sibling, or friend who we still cannot accept is no longer here. And for many months, we have grieved by ourselves. Tonight, we grieve and begin healing together. Though we may be physically separated, we, the American people, are united in spirit. And my abiding hope, my abiding prayer, is that we emerge from this ordeal with a new wisdom, to cherish simple moments, to imagine new possibilities, and to open our hearts just a little bit more to one another.
To heal, we must remember. It's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal. It's important to do that as a nation. That's why we're here today. Between sundown and dusk, let us shine the lights in the darkness along the sacred pool of reflection. Remember all whom we lost.
So Trump called it Chinese virus. He at some point mentioned that it will just go away. And many have blamed that nonchalant stance for why the infection seemed to have festered. And right now, America is considered the epicenter. Do you think that Biden has the magic wand?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so what's about leadership? Leadership is about ensuring that you let your followers trust you. In most cases, followers are the ones who do the job. What they need is direction. What they need is empathy. What they need is for you to show them that, look, I understand what you feel. We're in this together. We will go through this together. We can win this. We have the capacity. We have the will to. And in most cases, you find people just coming together and doing the right thing. But when you have a leader who tells you, don't worry, everything is okay, in most cases, people get confused. And what they need from you as leader, like I said earlier, is for you to just tell them this is the way we're going, and they'll start going there. And obviously, Biden have shown that he's got that. He's got that character. He's got that empathy. He's got that feeling. You can feel that, okay, I can trust this man. I can rely on him. You can see it in the face of the vice president as well. And those are the things, the essential qualities of leaders all over the world. So for me, so far, they've shown that given the opportunity, they would be able to direct the people in the direction that would help America win this pandemic.
So we expect a lot of policies to change in light of the non-pharmaceutical guidelines in fighting the virus. Now people will have to wear masks in the White House.
Absolutely.
Because we've seen... and after all, the president is a very old man, so he has to take good care of himself.
He has to take care of himself. Trump is old, but obviously, like Mr. Tepper said, sometimes some old people just don't get it. So it's not about the age, like you rightly said earlier. It's about the person. Do you have the right character? Do you understand what it takes? Do you know what to say? Because all of those are important. I say to people all the time, so at the particular time in your life when you occupy leadership office, even when you think you're in a social gathering, whatever you say is a policy statement. People take it on from there. So 24/7, you must be ready to say the right thing, because if you say the wrong thing, people will run with it, and at the end of the day, a lot of things might happen that you might not be able to control. So I think that's what we are going to see in Biden, and I expect that because of all the things he's shown so far in his career.
At some point, we saw Trump let America out of the WHO at a time where a lot of international cooperation is needed to fight the virus. We've seen the very, very sore relationship that country has developed with China. But do you see things change? I'm talking about international relations and global efforts to putting an end to the coronavirus.
I mean, obviously, because, I mean, if you remember, Biden was head of the Senate for External Affairs for the U.S. So he's one person that has played in the diplomatic space, you know, in a very, very robust way. He's done a lot of things for foreign affairs. He's been able to influence a lot of things in foreign affairs. And so, obviously, he's going to really, really, I mean, and a lot of people are actually expecting him to sort of reach out to them because, like I said, he has friends across the board. He's shown himself as a diplomat par excellence, someone that they can trust and they can deal with, they can discuss with, they can engage with, because obviously that is also very critical, because sometimes when you need to deal with someone and you cannot engage the person, it becomes difficult, because even if the person is going to win and the person is going to be the one that will take the decision, you at least want to be heard. You know, so Biden has shown himself as someone that will allow people to talk, and he will be able to explain to them in whatever reason that he needs to take certain decisions when he has to take those decisions.
Let's open the phone lines very briefly. Joshua has called in from Irewolede in Ogun State. Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning, Mr. Me. Good morning to your guest. Congratulations to America. I will still not give it to them for any reason. They've been in democracy, or they've been practicing democracy for over 200 years. We're just like toddlers. We're babies. We're too young to compare ourselves to them. So Africa should be given a chance to grow. Their 200 years plus democracy has thrown up a lot of crises, as revealed by Trump, meaning that there's no perfect system anywhere. I think the challenge to us now is to focus on growing Nigeria. I don't know if we are afraid to do that. The opportunity we have in the world today is that it has become a global village. We can copy from anyone and still adapt our own, or adopt our own system that will be homegrown, that will touch the lives of the people. The man from the foreign, the commentator just said, when people talk about money, they discuss about all these things, people are happy because it will trickle down to them. Not about politicians sharing it among themselves and forgetting the people that they're supposed to lead.
Absolutely, Mr. Joshua. Thank you very much for calling in. I'm so sorry we have a very short time for calls this morning. Let's get back to Washington very quickly. Mr. Ateba, it's important that we talk about the Biden's presidency and the U.S.-African relations. Many African leaders celebrated the Biden election victory and also sent messages from Nigeria and across board. But let's bear in mind, for instance, U.S. diplomatic relations with Abuja, vis-a-vis some of the contentions we've had in the past years, blocking of Nigeria's former Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's bid for the top job at the WTO. You can also recall the U.S. was seen as a major player in the delay to re-elect Akinwumi Adesina as AFDB president. How much do you expect to change? Some would say, at best, maybe a better diplomatic approach, but is Biden likely going to change U.S. Foreign policy towards Africa?
Everything will change. Everything will change. The African Development Bank saga, it wasn't the U.S. Like it was the U.S. because Trump was in power, but it was Trump and the Trump administration. A lot of people in the U.S. were against it. A lot of people in the U.S. were against Trump pulling out from WHO, pulling out from the Paris Accord. In fact, we had some state in California, like California, that said that they will now become the U.S. representative in the Paris Climate Accord. So everything will change. The Adesina saga should never have happened under Biden. The Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala saga at the WTO should never have happened also under Biden. And a lot of those things were racist things. It was just racism. And it was also because, Trump didn't know how to deal with China. Because to the US, their biggest threat in Africa is China in terms of everything, security, the economy, everything. US is China. And so, yes, a lot will change in the way racism will go down.
Okay.
In the way the US approaches
Let me just quickly
Africa.
find out if Mr. Adeyemo in the studio shares in your opinion. But before that, let's take Mazi Okorafo's call from Abia State. You have just a few seconds.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Anthony. Honestly speaking, President Trump has tried. At least that statement, America first, that means he's just addicted to Americans first before anyone else. At least for creating that employment for Americans, that breaking that ship with China, he has tried. At least to me, Trump is the best president. He touched all the world leaders. There is no president in the whole world that Trump administration did not touch, which means Trump had it. What we should wait and let us wait and see for the new coming president for 100 days.
All right. Thank you so much. Honestly, I don't think that Trump, deviated that much from who he was before election. He made it clear that America was spending too much in foreign direct investments in other countries, and it was going to take it back for them. But I understand that it was Trump with the shithole controversies with the unpresidential comment he made when our president visited. But do you share Mr. Teba's optimism that America's foreign policy would change towards Africa under Biden?
Yeah. In my opinion, it might not be too drastic. It might not be too obvious. Yes, it will change because, like I said earlier, Biden has a character that is obviously different from Trump. And so the way he will deal with diplomacy and the way he will deal with his friends will be a lot different from Trump. But America will always be first. Like Nigeria should be first for Nigerians, as South Africa should be first for South Africans. So I imagine that America will be first. And if you look at the interview that was conducted for the nominated Secretary of State yesterday, Anthony Blinken, it was very clear that what the relationship or what Trump was doing for China was the right thing. Maybe his approach was not really right. And if Clinton can say that, you already can hear what Biden will say, because they're very close. He was his chief security at some point. He worked with Obama, worked with Bill Clinton and all of that. So they would always want to take care of themselves first. I mean, that is the natural and right thing to do anyway. So the idea of us expecting that he will do everything for us is what I would always say to us. I think that's not the way to go. We should take advantage of now to quickly clean up the house and start to think of indigenous ways of dealing with a lot of things.
George has called in from Ikeja. You have 30 seconds. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you, Nifemi. I am happy for two things. One is sanity is returning back to America. If sanity returns back to America, sanity returns back to the world. Trump was an instrument of separation and destruction of what is good. I am happy that he's gone, and with the limited damage he has done, if America didn't take this step they've taken now, we would have had a situation where we'll go into a third world war before Trump completes his second term.
Absolutely, Mr. George. Thank you for your contribution. The perception has been that previous U.S. Democratic administration has been more sympathetic to Africa, and perhaps better understanding between U.S. and Nigeria is expected in the coming years. Let me have your final thought, Mr. Atiba, on this matter. You have a few seconds.
Okay, so my final thought is that having Biden come replace Trump today in about 6 to 7 hours will be a great thing for the African continent. Biden will restore dignity, relationship, and decency in the U.S.-Africa relation. And we also know that the Secretary of State, the incoming Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has also promised to undo the America alone policy and pursue a more collaboration with the African continent.
It's a good place to leave it, Mr. Atiba. A big thank you. Publisher Today News Africa, Washington, D.C., Simon Atiba. Thank you so much for finding time to come. Shea Adeyemo is publisher Inside Watch Africa. Gentlemen, a big thank you.
Thank you.
So Democrats are due to take the majority at the Senate, given the winnings that we saw in Georgia. Biden has made it clear that he expects the Senate will be able to balance its impeachment trial with its own stimulus package, $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package. Will Biden be successful given the uphill task he has with America being polarized along economic, health and crisis lines? It's a big question. Be sure that we'll cover the inauguration here on TVC all through the hours, keeping you abreast with what's happening there at Washington, D.C. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Thanks for being part of the program, and we'll be back tomorrow.